If you've been dreaming about owning a horse, it's possible if you move to Mexico. It's so much less expensive to own a horse and board it and feed it and whatnot down here in Mexico. And so I've got an expert here, Bev. She might claim that she's not an expert, but she is. And she's going to talk about how she found a place, found a horse, found a place to board it, the whole 9 yards, everything you need to know about owning a horse in Mexico.
So I'm Bev Garrett. I live full-time in El Centenario and always had horses in Canada, was a trainer, hunter-jumper. And after 4 years of not having them here, I decided I missed it. I needed to have horses back in my life, so I started making it happen. There aren't a lot of horses listed for sale, at least I couldn't find any, so I found someone who listed saddles for sale. So I contacted him. And through him, he didn't have horses for sale, but he introduced me to a huge network of Mexican people, lots of cowboys, that kind of thing, that had horses. And he helped me find a horse. He also allowed me to board my horse there until I could find someplace closer. So he's a wealth of knowledge, super connected in the community. And then when I decided that half an hour each way was a little too far to travel, I started looking for maybe a small piece of land to keep my own horse. That didn't happen, but through that I found a realtor who spoke English, and he said, "Do you want to just find a place to rent?" And I said, "To rent? Yeah, okay. Can I board my horse there?" He said, "Sure." So he introduced me to Jose Luis, who's a gentleman that owns this place. And I've been here over 1.5 years now. And it's awesome. It's such a great place. It's 6 minutes from my house. I can come on the side-by-side, so I don't even need to use my vehicle. Okay, so even though I live on the Baja Peninsula, there are many places in Mexico that are a lot more horsey, that there's competitions. They've had the Pan Am Games in Guadalajara. So finding a horse and keeping a horse maybe in a similar way that you would in Canada or the States is easier on the mainland. In Baja, there's not a large competition network, so we basically have to trail ride here. Some of the trail rides take you down on the beach and that kind of thing. From here, we find we ride in the desert. It's a lot more laid back. So if you want competition, parts of the mainland Mexico are the way to go. And there's a huge polo community there. There's a huge hunter-jumper community. Dressage is very big in Mexico. And they love horses. Mexican people love horses. So they breed them. They've imported from all over the world. We're a little more rustic on Baja, and we do things a little differently here. And our horses are a little different too. I find them super clever. They don't get hung up in wire. If we kept a horse in Canada, in some of the situations I've seen them in, we would have a horse that had cuts and scars and 3 legs. But here, these horses are very, very clever at keeping themselves safe.
I'm quite jealous of Bev's cowboy boots. I don't have cowboy boots in Mexico. I have them up in Portland, Oregon, but I don't have access to a horse there. And Bev has invited me to ride one of her horses. So I have only ridden a horse one other time in my life, and I don't remember it being very pretty. So this is going to be interesting.
If you wanted to bring your own horse from Canada and Mexico, there are some quarantine requirements. The best thing to do would be to hook up with a really knowledgeable transporter. And there are some in Canada. There's one that I used in particular. He helped me. I didn't bring my own horse down here. I exported a horse to Mexico. One of the issues down here is sand colic, because there's so much sand and dust in the soil in Baja that it collects in the intestine. It's very heavy. So we could have sand colic issues. You don't want to feed your horse on the ground if at all possible. I don't know that the heat would be an issue. Horses tend to adapt to whatever climate you put them in. I would encourage you to find a place to keep them that is relatively safe. Canadian and American horses are not going to be familiar with the jumping cactus that sort of leaps out and attaches to their face. These horses here know about that kind of thing, but your Canadian or horse from the States probably don't, and I think they could find themselves in trouble. This is a pretty safe. This is a pretty safe environment. The wire is the biggest thing here. We tend to like to use wood or some sort of plastic coated cable up north. We don't. That doesn't exist down here. So really, your best bet is to try and find something here that's acclimatized. It's good with the environment here. Is sure-footed on the trails. If you're looking to buy a horse down here and you're looking for a specific breed, the mainland is the place to go. And they ship them over here. It's not that difficult. It's just a process. But they have many different breeds there. On the Baja Peninsula, we don't really have so many breeds. Most of them are mixes. There's a high percentage of quarter horse and a high percentage of Andalusian horses here. So they love the Baroque type horses that they call them dancing horses, and they do all these beautiful kind of trick movements. I have 2 horses. Both of them are primarily quarter horse. One is possibly gaited. Her walk is probably faster than most horses trot. Disposition-wise, they're solid. They're good. They don't pull back when you tie them like a lot of northern horses do. Sorry, he is getting in your face. And but they're great to work around, and they're very forgiving. So if you're not super knowledgeable and you buy a horse that a Mexican person has put some time into, you have something that's worth keeping. Price-wise, horses in Canada and the States right now are very expensive. It's difficult to find anything for under $5,000 to $10,000 is a basic trail horse. Whereas here, if we want to talk specific dollars, I paid about $1,250 US for each of my horses. And I mean, that to me is just a steal. It's almost nothing. So the price of horses down here, very, very affordable. And you can find them for much less than that. You can find them for a little more, but you can find them for a lot less as well. My advice is find someone really knowledgeable to help you out, because there's a language barrier. And if you don't know what you're looking for, it's going to be really difficult for you to tell them that you want a horse that's really sure-footed on the trail, or a horse that gets along well with others, a horse that doesn't mind dogs running out at them. Know what you're looking for, or take someone along that does know what they're looking for to help you out. And also soundness is an issue. They may not tell you, mostly because, they may not even know, but they may not tell you if the horse has been lame, or the horse has maybe had a foot problem or a leg problem in the past. So if you aren't savvy enough to pick that out, you could end up having a lawn ornament, basically. The facility that I keep my horses at is just a few minutes from my house. It's on the border of Chimetla and El Centenario, and there's a number of horses here. There's probably 12 to 15 at any given time. I think that Rebecca and I are the only 2 people that actually ride our horses. So I don't really know what they do with them, but they love them. Some of them are very young. They're too young to ride. But really, we're the only ones that ride regularly. There is another facility that I know of. It's primarily men, and apparently it's a club, and they don't actually welcome women into it. But Rebecca and I were lucky enough to have a tour of the place. It's really nice, but the horses are kept in stalls, and there's no turnout. So if you're not there to exercise your horse and make sure it gets out on a regular basis, it's going to stand in a 14 by 14 foot stall for a very long time. But they do have a nice arena. They have a nice round pen. So if you want to train, that might be something worth checking out. On the mainland, there's every facility imaginable. They have specific to the discipline that you're looking for. They also have huge competition areas. I think I mentioned before, they have a very active polo network on the mainland. Some of the other options on Baja are, again, we're lucky enough to have grass because we have some irrigation here. Most horse places don't have irrigation, so the horses are kept in a pretty dusty stall. They do need shade, so you absolutely want to make sure that there's shade because the heat is intense in the summer. But having some nice grass, they have shade for trees. They also have a shade structure here, so we're really happy with this place. I think I think it's great, and it's a magical place. People come here and they have barbecues on weekends. The Mexican music is playing loud almost every afternoon in the summer. They're friendly. Tecate is everywhere. And it's just a fun place to be. It's always fun. It's always magical here. So here we're lucky enough to have several different paddocks and fields. The horses are, for the most part, kept separately in their own groups. So if you own 3 horses, you'll likely be given a specific field or paddock. So Rebecca and I we have 3 horses between us. We keep our horses in this area. So we have a pen and we have a field. He also was nice enough to allow us to build a round pen. So we had, for, I think it was like, I don't know, $1,100 or $1,200, we were able to get someone to come in and construct a round pen, so we can do groundwork on our horses. If we wanted to do some specific training, that's available to us. They're not always kept separate. So you do have to, ensure if that's something that you would like to do, then that's something you need to talk about beforehand, have that conversation. In Canada and the States, again, it's more typical to keep the horses separate. There's less risk of injury. They don't kick each other. There's no bite marks on their necks and backs. But here, our horses get along pretty good. So it's not really been a problem. We haven't had any major injuries. We did have one injury within the first week of Rebecca's horse being here. She got her face caught in a wire. We were able to get a vet in. He sedated her, stitched it up, and you can't even see it now. Cost-wise, it costs about $250 a month per horse, and that includes someone feeding your horse, the place to stay, the food, vet, and farrier bills. So that's what it averages me, about $250 a month. One of the huge savings is farrier bills. I think my son pays upwards of $200 to have his horse have new shoes every 6 weeks, and here we pay $45. So that's significant savings right there. One of the differences I've found in feeding horses here is the only hay we can find is straight alfalfa. Some of it's really good, some of it's not so good, but again, in Canada or the States, we wouldn't feed straight alfalfa to our horse. It's just too hot a food. Here the horses seem to do well on it. They actually thrive. We pay about $10 a bale, and I'm not sure what the price in Canada or the States is, but I think it's a lot higher than that right now. So food is significantly less.
My name is Rebecca McDonald, and Bev is a good friend of mine, and she is responsible for getting me into owning a horse here in Baja. I grew up riding and always wanted to own my own horse again, but couldn't afford it in the U.S. Just too much time, too much money. So I came here and Bev told me how easy it is to have a horse in Baja. So she helped me find Gypsy here.
Gypsy just told me that she is subscribed to this channel. Are you? Click the subscribe button and the little bell icon to get notified of future videos.
First day that I brought her here, we put her in the pen that we're standing in now. And there's a little overhang here for shade structure. But it's a little small because it was actually intended, used to be used for lambs. So it's not quite as high as it could be. And Gypsy spooked being in a new pen, threw her head up and split her forehead here wide open. So I came in and she was bleeding and it was split open. And what do you do? It was our first day and I didn't even have a vet for her yet. So I went to my dog vet, who lives here in Centenario and has his business here, and asked him if he could help. And he said yes, and he came out here and sedated her for me and stitched up her pretty forehead and did a beautiful job, as you can see. You can't even tell anymore, the scars. So that was her first day here at the farm. We haven't had any dramatic incidents like that since then. She's gotten used to being here, and she's a good girl. To do that, I think it only cost me a couple hundred pesos, which might be 20 or 30 bucks in the U.S. To get a vet to actually come out to you and do sedation and stitches and all of that would have been certainly hundreds of dollars in the U.S. So the cost of vet care here is very low compared to what you would find in the States. Since then, we have found a real horse vet that got recommended to us, and he's come out and done vaccinations on the horses, helped us with any issues we might be having, and it's still probably a fraction of the cost of what we would pay in the U.S. for that kind of care. So they're really well taken care of. The vets are really knowledgeable here. They're well trained. They know what they're doing. I had x-rays done on her foot. She had a little problem with her foot. They brought a portable x-ray machine out and did x-rays on her. And again, it only cost me maybe 40 or 50 bucks to do that. So much more affordable to keep a horse here.
So this is our tack area. In Canada or the States, you're going to pay upwards of $1,000 to have a tack trunk like this. So I found this at a Segunda. And,
wow.
a saddle rack in there and some hooks and
Cool.
80 bucks. The cost of saddles here are significantly less. Rebecca found the saddle for a couple $100 from someone in La Paz. It would easily be like close to $1,000 probably in Canada. It's a nice saddle. It's very well made. Just a little dusty.
Little dusty.
Little dusty. If you want to train, there are areas to do it here. We have a racetrack, quarter-mile racetrack, and when I first started, Rio barely knew how to walk, trot, and canter. Like, it was not good. So I spent hours doing circles on the racetrack. The footing is good. It's not as wide as I would like. Once I was able to venture out on the trails, there are so many, there's acres and acres of flat land with good footing. You can do as many circles as you want. You can train your horse to do anything, dressage, reining, anything that you have an interest in. The land is available here to do it. And tie it into a trail ride. I do both on the same day.
Here, we're really lucky. We live in Baja, and most of the Baja Peninsula is desert. And certainly where we live here in La Paz, it's desert meets ocean. So having this kind of pasture with green grass and fields and trees is a little bit unusual. So we were really lucky to find this little farm with Jose Luis, the owner. He uses recycled water to water the field. And so we have nice green grass for our horses to graze on. And that's really unusual here in Baja.
Management of horses here is a little different. It's definitely a little more natural. Things happen organically. It's hands-off. We have a new baby here, a beautiful little filly. Nobody knew she was pregnant. I looked at the mare the day before that and I thought, oh, she's in really good shape. Like, she's a chubby horse, which we don't often see here. And the next day, the baby arrived. Nobody knew. But they had her in with her ungelded, probably half-brother. And that's what we have. We don't overmanage horses here. I think that contributes to the fact that they are so smart. They figure things out on their own. There are some casualties for sure, but for the most part, they're happy, they're healthy. We don't have a lot of mental or emotional issues with horses the way we sometimes do in Canada and the States. The horses are happy horses. They're not overused, they're not overworked, and they're certainly not overmanaged. So Rebecca and I were looking for a horse for her when we saw Zoe. Zoe wasn't a viable candidate. She was tied to a tree. She was very, very skinny, underweight, looked tiny. She's not, so we couldn't forget about her. I ended up going back and buying her. And she was lame, so after 8 months and a lot of good farrier care by our farrier and an equine vet, she was finally sound, and she's awesome. Like, she's such a great riding horse. We're really lucky to here we can get on our horse and ride right out into the backyard. We have miles and miles of trails. We've ridden for 2-3 hours regularly I've been here a year and a half now. And you don't have to go on the same trail twice. It goes on forever. Part of it is the bike trails. We have a huge bike network here, and so we can tie into that and all of the different roads that I think the farmers and ranchers have to take care of their livestock. Most of it's free range here. So in order to see where their goats are, where their horses and cows are, they just put in these little skid trails, and we have the option of riding on them. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The desert is incredible. I feel like I'm in a John Wayne movie almost every day.
So for those of you guys out there who your wife or partner really wants a horse, this is a great reason, a great way to convince them to move to Mexico. Is it's possible to have a horse here where it might not be possible back where you are. I know that my wife loves horses, and I can't quite figure out why she hasn't bought a horse down here yet. I was talking to these guys and they said, having your horse here just part-time, we only live here 6 months a year, totally reasonable because the care for them is so inexpensive. So that's an option too. I'm just hoping that my wife doesn't watch this video. Hasta luego.